All right, next part for us is ratio tables. And again, I'm going to do a couple of them for you, walk you through it, kind of help you kind of see how you want to attack these problems and how to think through them. And then you can try one for yourself. In a ratio table, there's often lots of ways of getting there. So I'm going to do a couple of different ways of getting there. You might have picked a different one yourself, but as long as you get that same final answer at the end of the problem, you're good with that problem. Okay. So first one says, to make cranberry jam, you need 12 cups of sugar for every 16 cups of cranberries. Find the amount of sugar needed for 4 cups of cranberries. All right, so we need to go from 16 to 4. And now I know for this one, the numbers are easy. We really could go right from 16 to 4. But remember, the whole point of a ratio table is that each of these pairs of numbers is a different equal ratio. They're all going to be equivalent to each other. They're all representing the same amount, just different versions of it, but they all need to be different. So we can't just skip over it just because we happen to have an easy number. So we need to go from 16 to something and then to 4. Okay? Well, there's a couple options. I could go down to a 1. I could go down to a 2. I could go down to an 8. Or I could go up to a 32. All of those work. Those are all things that 16 can be turned into, and then that new number could turn into a 4 when I'm done. I'm going to choose to go down to an 8. Okay? That was kind of the first one that came to mind. Well, here's the question to ask yourself. How did it go from 16 to 8? Well, I divided by 2. So in order for it to stay equivalent, I have to do the same thing here. I have to divide by 2, and that gives me 6. Now I need to go from the 8 to the 4. Well, to get from 8 to 4, I divide by 2. So I do the same thing up top and get 3 as an answer. That's my final answer is I would need 3 cups of sugar to go with 4 cups of cranberry for my jam. Now, let's go ahead and tackle this one a second time down below. This time I'm going to go down to a 1 instead of an 8. And as you remember from talking in class, when in doubt, you can always go to a 1. So no matter what you do, you always have that as an option. If ratio tables are something you struggle with, you're not quite sure what to pick, just pick a 1. But now we have to figure out how to get to that 1. So I need to go from 16 to 1. To do that, I would divide by 16. So I do the same thing to my second number. 12 divided by 16 is 0.75. Decimals are okay. Then I have to go from my 1 to the 4. I'm trying to get from one ratio to the next one. Well, to get from 1 to 4, I multiply times 4. So I have to treat both parts of this ratio table equally. I multiply by 4 down here, so I do the same thing up top. 0.75 times 4 is 3. Notice how no matter which number I chose in the middle, I still got to that 3 as my final answer. All right, so let's try another one together. It says Casey took 25 tests in 135 days. Hopefully that's not like math tests, because that's a lot of math tests. Maybe it's a blood sugar test or something like that, or maybe they're taking a fitness test as they're doing some training. But based on that rate, we want to know how many would she take, or how many days would it take for 10 tests? Well, the key in a ratio table is always to focus on where do I know the beginning and ending number, because it tells me where I'm starting and it tells me where I'm aiming for. So I need to go from 25 to something and then to 10. So I tend to always want to go smaller. So I think about what could I divide 25 by to make it into a smaller number? Well, I could make it into a 5. I could even make it into a 1. Or if you want to, you can make 25 bigger. Go to something bigger that then could turn into a 10 later on. Well, 25 could turn into a 50 if I wanted to, because 50 turns into 10 nicely. My first instinct was to go with the 5, so I'm going to go with that one. Okay. Now I need to figure out what goes with the 5. So I asked myself, how did I go from a 25 to a 5? Well, I divided by 5. So I do the same thing up top. I do 135 divided by 5. And remember, calculator's perfectly fine. And I get 27 days for 5 tests. Now, I want to go from 5 to my ending number of 10. To go from 5 to 10, I multiply times 2. So I do the same thing up top and get 54 days for 10 tests. Okay. All right, let's do this one a second time, but always use our backup. We can always go down to a 1. Okay. When in doubt, choose a 1. You might get some decimals. It might be some uglier numbers, but it'll still get you to that final answer, especially when you have a calculator handy. So to go from 25 to 1, I would have to divide by 25. So I do the same thing up here. 135 divided by 25 is 5.4. I'll write that in a different number so it stands out. So I treated them both equally. Then to go from a 1 to a 10, I have to multiply by 10. So I do the same thing to this number. 5.4 times 10 is 54. Notice I got the same answer both times. So both of them are perfectly fine as long as I have all my work there. But the goal is trying to get from that first number to that last number using multiplying or dividing.